If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
And we are back. I'm Chris Evan, the CEO of Survival Dispatch, joined tonight by my good friend Khalid Muhammad from Command 11, based out of Pakistan. He's half American. He's also our in-house 008. Don't ask. Go back, watch previous episodes if you want to know how he got that name. Below him, my good friend Randy Nance, back home in Texas, combat wounded Green Beret. And directly below me, our in-house CIA operative, Jeff MD, author extraordinaire, 007, the dream team, basically. Now, I'm sure Mike Sterling just heard that one. Son of a bitch. You know?
Well, he should get on
the show. Lazy ass.
He's been working. All credit to Mike. He's been working his ass off. He's been super.
So he says. We know that for a fact. Or is it just we're taking his word for it?
Well,
he does work for
eating bonbons and watching soap operas for all we know.
Leave it to the CIA guy to say that, right? So
I'm just saying he plays with explosives, so we'll just leave him alone.
Well, I spoke to him at length earlier this week, and I think we'll see him back next week for some episodes. So we're looking forward to that. It brings a wealth of expertise to the table. So we cut it short last night because we have a lot of really valuable information in this portion of the program that we actually started last night. Now, last night we went through what happened in Mumbai in 2008 and Paris in 2015 to essentially establish this is the blueprint that the terrorists are working from, especially ISIS. So if you didn't watch last night, that's okay. What we're going to be sharing tonight are the actual things you should do and learn to do and practice to do before the shit hits the fan, if you so happen to find yourself in the unlucky situation of being on the X. So with that being said, essentially the underlying theme of all of this last night and tonight is the importance of understanding the sophistication of these terrorist attacks versus what we saw on 9/11 and 9/11 1.0 and prior to that, which, yes, there was an element of sophistication, but they've taken it to a whole new level, whether it be their tactics, their training, even all of their strategic stuff that they're doing. So if you walk away with nothing else other than this one thing from the thumbnail tonight and last night, the attack is not over when you think the attack is over. That's what resulted in all kinds of secondary and tertiary attacks and people killed by design in Mumbai and Paris. And there's been other instances of it as well. The other part is we got some intel today. I can't share it with you because it came from a law enforcement agency where the person would, they'd get in shit for sharing it with the public, but I shared it with Khalid. I'll share it with Jeff and Randy here once we get going behind the scenes, but suffice it to say, this was intel from a large police agency basically saying that they have hard evidence of the terrorists becoming imposters, essentially appearing as law enforcement officers, just like they did on 10/7 in Israel, and they've done multiple other times. That's not a new tactic, but imagine you're in one of these tier 2 cities that gets attacked, and you're trying to exfil the area because you're on the X or close to the X, and you're greeted by who you think are law enforcement officers, and as you run towards them, they gun you down. You know, that's unfortunately what we're looking at. We've got stolen uniforms for cops, stolen uniforms for paramedics, stolen uniforms for National Guard troops. There's a litany of this that you can see in previous podcasts. Easy to find when you search on, by the way. So again, the message of the day is if you happen to be in one of these tier 2 cities when 9/11 2.0 goes down, it ain't over till the fat lady sings, and she might not sing for 72 plus hours. So distance equals safety. So with that being said, we're going to do the conflicted question and get that out of the way. And if you're not familiar with this, conflictofthegame.com, these are card games with scenarios in post-apocalyptic settings. There's always some element of morality to the questions, hence the name Conflicted. So here we go. Out of all the conspiracies in the world today, name 2 conspiracy theories that you believe in that other people may think are crazy. Briefly explain why you believe them to be true. So that's an interesting question, a little bit off the beaten path compared to
we don't have any left that haven't been proven, right?
But see, that's the problem. We need more conspiracy theories. We're running out of conspiracy theories. So I'm going to move directly into the first piece of news that came out of France today. And I'm going to let Khalid handle the first 2, and then I've got one for Randy and Jeff before we get going. But Khalid, tell us about this 17-year-old that was radicalized online by ISKP.
This kid... French intelligence, I called French intelligence and got a little bit of background on this. They said that he started getting radicalized about 3 months ago. He was introduced to ISKP online. He started being radicalized. From the time he started being radicalized, he had some intentions that he wanted to get out. Let's put it that way. He had a little bit of anger issues that he wanted to get out. By the time he got radicalization completely done, he'd learned bomb making. He had learned how to carry out an attack. He had learned how to build IEDs. This 17-year-old was caught in France by French intelligence. He was planning an attack on the level of what we're talking about. Schools, hospitals, shopping centers, the Israeli embassy, the U.S. embassy, and he had called it Operation Return to the Flames. And he was ready to go. I mean, if you'd given him maybe 4 days more, he would have carried out the attack.
I didn't realize it was that close, Khalid. I mean, this came down to the wire. Wow.
Well, online, you wouldn't have found this information. I called DGSE, French intelligence, and because we've worked with them before, they let me in on what the whole story was. And they said, you know what you guys have been talking about a coordinated attack. This may have been a test run to see if it could actually be carried out.
Wow, that's crazy. So let's move to the next one, which is yours as well, and then we'll go to Jeff and Randy. So this one, I'm not going to play the video. You can see it's spinning anyway, but at Political Base MA, this guy's really good at providing intel out of Afghanistan, but a clear example of the alliance of terrorist groups with the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, TTP, Boko Haram, and hundreds of mercenary fighters from the Middle East to Africa, shoulder to shoulder with the Taliban, stormed Panjshir, showing that, I don't know why he said we are pursuing a common goal. I think he took the language out of the video. They are pursuing a common goal. That was really the gist of it. And this keeps coming up where people say, you know, the Taliban are our friends, whether it's Sebastian Gorka or online trolls saying the Taliban's our friend and we should keep paying them $80 million a week. I saw somebody, by the way, today comment, I think it was on one of your posts, about $80 million a month. It's not $80 million a month. It's $80 million a week.
Yeah.
You know, and essentially what it is this administration is trying to buy Donald Trump a Nobel Peace Prize. And I love most of Donald Trump's policies, but this one's a disaster. So go ahead and just speak to that for a minute.
Well, the thing here is that we've been saying this for a long time, and we sent you a map of how all these groups are interconnected and how they're all operating together. And the council they built has one leader from every terror group around the world. The problem is most people are not understanding that this is all one group because it's one objective. Once that objective is done, they'll start fighting each other for territory within certain areas. But right now, the goal is establishing that Islamic caliphate that bin Laden wanted. The difference was, there's a really interesting difference here. Bin Laden wanted to establish a global Islamic caliphate, but he was very patient in doing it. Hamza is not patient. Hamza wants to do it right now and as fast as possible, which is why he's moving as quick as he is. Another thing that I want to put into the conversation.
Whoa, time out. You must be a conspiracy theorist. You actually believe Hamza bin Laden's alive? Because we were told for years he was dead.
No, I'm sure he's alive. I don't even think it. I'm sure he's alive. Yeah, I did. That is a conspiracy theory that the CIA is passing around that no, we're not going to talk about. British intelligence has confirmed he's alive. British intelligence has confirmed he's alive. And anyone who's saying he's not alive, well, okay, when you see him, the thing with Hamza is that he's not a public figure like his father was. He stays in the background and lets the show run on its own. And he calls the shots from behind the scenes. Whereas Osama would record videos and put videos out saying that, you know, this is what's going on. This is what I'm going to do. This is what my plan is. Hamza is very quiet. He sits back, he runs the show, and he carries out the attacks. But the problem you're going to have is once they carry out 9/11 2.0 in Europe and in the US, Hamza will make a video and he will flat out say, this was my father's goal. This was my father's objective. We have achieved it.
Yeah, retribution as well, for sure.
Yep.
So, Randy, I'm not going to play this video. I really want to get into the meat of the stuff that we had to push from last night into tonight. And I don't really need to play the video. I'll put the link in the live chat for everybody who wants to watch it. But you've got these demonstrations going on in Portland, I believe, where Antifa and friends are calling for the beheading of ICE officers. So as you can see, it's kind of hard to see. It's a little bit dark, but right here, that's a mock guillotine. You can see the blade on it right there. I mean, it's an absolutely brutal escalation of rhetoric, and this sort of stuff, there's a price to be paid when you raise the rhetoric like this. As far as violence against, you know, ICE officers and others is concerned, I personally think that Donald Trump today said he's going to send in the National Guard and clean the shit up, and I support him on that. Somebody got to put an end to this.
We should have already done that.
Yeah.
As soon as Portland started doing this 5 years ago, we should have sent the National Guard in there to put an end to that. But, you know, here's the problem. That is like a ripe peach up there. You know what I'm saying? We talk about the stories. He just talked about that first story, the kid, right? 17 years old, mad. Look, it lends to exactly what we've been telling you all this whole time. Look how easy it is to take some kid like that that's all pissed off and turn them into a weapon of some sort, and they'll go do whatever you want them to do because they think they think they're being a part of something bigger. What do you think's going on in Portland right now? Honestly, if this was us and they were sending me and a team over to another country, we'd want to go to Portland right off the bat because you could start a good network right there for sure, easily. It wouldn't even be hard, folks. This would be easy stuff. And, you know, until we get in there, when this kind of thing happens, I don't care what city or what state, we need to go in there with the National Guard and put that stuff down. However that has to be. I hate to say that, but that's the truth of the matter. I mean, look, they're putting out guillotines or calling for death. Somehow, if you're a conservative or you're in another state and you say something like that, which I saw, there was a kid that got arrested the other day that said, what was it? The crowd that were chanting in Dearborn, Michigan. This kid said somebody needs to go over there and unload a couple of magazines. Basically all he said. He didn't say shoot people. He didn't say kill them. He said let off a couple of magazines. They wouldn't have arrested that guy.
Mm-hmm.
But here we have them shouting this kind of stuff. Or as we've mentioned, when you hear them say cut off Donald Trump's head or anything else like that, there is nothing done about it. If you'd have said that about Biden, or God forbid, you said something like that even back in the day, they arrested people that said stuff like that about Obama, didn't they? I'm pretty sure. We'd have to go back and look, but I think there was 1 or 2 arrests. But regardless, it's happening now today where one part, and I don't call it right and left anymore, as you know, the way I team the teams out, because if we look up on the Hill, it's not just the Democrats. Probably at least half those Republicans are just as compromised. So it's now the sides are between the side that loves this country and wants to keep it moving forward and preserve it. And then you have the side that hates this country with everything they have, and they want to tear it down and start over. And that's where we're at.
Well, I mean, the choices are you're either American or not. And
That's
they
right.
fall into that second category or not. They're not Americans any stretch of the imagination. So changing gears ever so slightly for you, Jeff, I'm going to play a portion of this Joe Rogan podcast, and it's regarding mentally ill transgenders and guns and shooting. I personally, somebody made a comment about not this particular video, but this topic, and said, the interesting thing that's going to come out of this is Donald Trump is, making intonations that he's going to strip gun rights from transgender people. And somebody said it's going to be hilarious to see the Democrats fall on the side of another one of those 95-5 arguments, but actually arguing in favor of gun rights for mentally ill transgenders. But I'll play probably half of this or so. It's all we need to get the context.
Wonder if any of the woke AI chatbots have talked to any of these trans school shooters.
They might have.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
well, the last one, yeah, I don't know.
Bro, it's like 7 of the last X amount of 7 in a row have been trans, except one was non-binary, which is just diet trans.
It is.
Right? That's diet trans. That's trans without the sugar.
I just don't get it. Like, I felt suicidal. Like, stay at home and kill yourself. Like, don't go into schools.
Yeah, or just go for a walk.
Yeah, that would be good too.
The problem is some people get to a certain point in their life and they have no friends and no community and no identity and no life, and they're not successful and they feel like shit. And then they have gender dysphoria on top of that. And then they're probably on a bunch of SSRIs, which RFK Jr. is going to apparently do some sort of a large scale research into the connection between mass shootings and psychiatric drugs, because it is real and everyone knows it. And it's just this dirty secret that no one talks about because all the media is paid off by the pharmaceutical drug companies, and nobody wants to make this correlation connection because you also risk the wrath of all these people that are on them saying, I'm on them and I'm not doing anything. It's not the pills.
Sometimes it's easy to forget just how funny Joe Rogan is, for crying out loud. But let me preface Jeff's comments on this just by saying the World Health Organization, which is a shit organization, up until 2018 classified body dysphoria, transgenderism as a mental illness, which is what it is. And then somebody on the other side decided to introduce this as an element of this irregular warfare that they're waging against us. And the goal, of course, being to divide and conquer a society, because they know they can't conquer us kinetically by landing on our shores. And the numbers are astronomical. I got attacked on Substack last week because I did a rebuttal to a guy who'd written an article in favor of all the trans baloney. And I got attacked by a bunch of people, but one lady came out and she didn't rebut what I said, but with facts. She said, you're full of it. And you could have done a simple search on AI. Well, here's the thing. You guys can go look this up and confirm this. The number one source for data for the best known AI engines out there. You ready for this? Drum roll, please. Reddit. A bunch of far left basement dwelling kids who don't know shit from Shinola, and that's where these AIs are drawing their stuff from. But Jeff, I want to turn it over to you and get your thoughts on both aspects of this: the transgenders, mass shootings, and the SSRIs on top of that.
Yeah, the transgender mass shooting. Okay, you get someone who is mentally unstable, confused, angry, and then you give them a whole bunch of hormones that are conflicting with their natural hormones, and then you wonder why they go apeshit. And how forever, it was the old "I am Napoleon." Okay, you were crazy if you said that, but now you go, "I'm Josephine." That's okay. No, if you think you are something you are not. I mean, objectively, you are not. You can look in the mirror and say, okay, I am a human. I'm not a horse, but I feel like a horse, so I'm a horse. You have a mental problem, and it needs to be treated, not reinforced. And forever in a day, people with serious psychiatric conditions, like convicted felons, were not allowed to own firearms. And that is called common sense. We don't give, Charles Manson a handgun, because he's freaking nuts.
Yep.
And there's a little bit of just common sense here. And then the SSRIs, man, they screw people up. I mean, seriously screw people up. I knew someone who was diagnosed on, they had low hormone levels, and the doctor said, hey, you need to go on SSRIs. Went on it for like 6 weeks and got off because person said, I was ready to kill my kid, my high school age son, which, I can understand wanting to kill a high school age son sometimes. But it was like, it just made me almost maniacal. So they flushed him down the toilet, and they've been fine ever since. But yeah, those things mess you up. And, I'm sure for some people they're helpful, but they give them out like they're in Pez dispensers, like they're candy.
Yeah, it's a disaster for sure. And I'm pretty sure we know what's going to come out of RFK's investigation. So Jeff, a couple of questions for you. Number one, I just saw on our main YouTube channel, Todd just popped in and said he's Batman. So and then the next comment was Todd's here to save us. So thank you, Batman. We appreciate your support and your presence. I hope
I feel so much safer now.
Yes, we all feel safer. Thank you very much, Batman. We appreciate that.
Well, I heard Charlie Kirk says, okay, you can dress up as Julius Caesar, but that doesn't mean you're in charge of the Roman Empire.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
Reality kicks in at some point.
So, Jeff, here's my question for you, because I keep seeing it coming up in interviews constantly where you have these adversarial panels, and some typically, middle-aged or younger white woman, which almost all of them are on SSRIs. 62% of them admit that they're on SSRIs, which means it's like 82%. And somebody who's actually grounded in reality will point out that body dysphoria. Here's a crazy thing, by the way. You can look this up. The men who think that there are women, there's a mental condition tied to it that's basically some sort of erotica by putting on women's clothes.
Yeah.
But it's at the level that it's a mental illness, okay? Yeah. And I'm trying to remember with women, that wasn't the case. It was something else. I don't recall what the trigger was, but it was completely 180 degrees opposite to what it was with these mentally ill men. They're all mentally ill, but they have different reasons. But what do you have to say when one of these self-righteous, Karens speaks up and says, but the science says, and the health director or whoever is in charge of health and human services for the Washington State earlier this week says, we're not going to have this debate over gender because the science is settled. Well, I was always taught in science class that the science is never settled.
Never settled. Science is never settled. As an engineer, you got to verify, validate everything.
Besides your head exploding and calling these people everything but a white person, how do you counter their bullshit?
Well, when they say studies prove, studies don't prove anything. And there was a very interesting thing that the American Psychiatric Association actually put out. They did it. They actually had to admit that over 50% of their peer-reviewed studies that they published in their journals were not reproducible.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's like I say, hey, I did a study and 1 + 1 = 3. And then you go, well, I got 1 + 1, but I got 2. And so on, but that's the whole point is if it's not reproducible, it ain't true.
Yeah.
I would challenge that and say it's absolutely reproducible, but all they got to do is throw more money at it.
Well,
They just got to buy off another crooked son of a bitch. There you go. We reproduced it, because that's what's happening with a lot of this drug stuff, right?
Oh yeah, you do. You need to do double blinds on everything, and and do placebos and the whole 9 yards. And if they don't get the results, then it doesn't work the way you think it does or the way you want it to.
Right. Yeah, appreciate that, Jeff. So just before we get into our main topic, I want to quote some statistics that I haven't thrown out there for a little while. During an election year, 60% of advertising revenue that legacy media brings in is from big pharma. During a non-election year, that number goes up to 75%. all of those commercials that you see, you should, if you're suffering from whatever, you should take this drug. It might kill you, but you should take this drug. And if you take this drug and you get these side effects, don't worry, we have this other drug that you can take as well. That the purpose is not for you to go into your primary and say, hey, I saw this commercial, write me a script. That does happen. And there's an element of revenue generation from that. But what it does do is it gives them immense control over the narratives. And they are able to say to the networks, you are going to take this position that transgenderism is perfectly normal. And if you don't, we'll just pull our ad spend. We'll go somewhere else. The second part to that is for years and years, people thought the military industrial complex was the, biggest lobby in DC, spent the most money. They're a fraction of the size of what big pharma does. And we just saw this yesterday with RFK in the senators. It was glorious. He absolutely slayed them.
Well, if you notice when they have to list the side effects, almost every one of them, suicidal thoughts.
Yes.
Suicidal thoughts. And there was one, if you have tardic dyskinesia from taking an SSRI, you need to take this drug. So they give you a drug, which probably gives you suicidal thoughts. And then it gives you the shake. So they give you a drug to counter the shakes, which can also give you suicidal thoughts. Yep. And before long, they're going to give you something for the suicidal thoughts that instead will give you homicidal thoughts. Yep. The thing is, get off all that crap and then see what happens. You may wake up one morning and find out you're normal.
Great point, Jeff, because that was actually going to be my last point. I looked into this maybe a year ago or so as far as the side effects were concerned. And almost every single drug out there that the FDA says may have, suicidal tendencies connected to it also has homicidal ideation as an accompanying side effect.
They almost go together. Almost.
Well, you want to kill.
Yeah.
Kill yourself and kill others.
No respect for the preciousness of life at the end of the day. No. So, all right. So let's jump into this. I'm going to give you a quick synopsis here. Then I'm going to go to Khalid and have him go over all of the key points for the initial, let's call it tactical vulnerabilities and how they tie into psychology. But I'll give you the Cliff Notes version first. So where there's a primary attack, in a lot of cases with these complex coordinated attacks, it's essentially just used to draw in first responders. The first attack, in many cases, is nowhere near as bad as the second attack. So they have multiple small cells attacking multiple small locations like cafes simultaneously. First responders are deployed. The first responders show up and boom, they hit them and they kill a whole bunch of them plus a bunch of other bystanders because people think when it's over, and it's not over. And that's the thing that we're going to keep hammering away on this. So those secondary attacks are targeted at the first responders, but they hit everybody else around them as well. While that's happening, the other cells are going to additional venues. And now they're starting, these tertiary attacks where it's like a field day and there's no first responders to respond because they've responded to the first ones and they've been, unfortunately killed in the line of duty as well. So bottom line is if you're caught on the X during any of these, a tier 2 city, which means population of 100 to 500,000 with one tier 1 trauma center, those are the criteria that they're using. There's 16 cities in America that are tier 2 population wise and have one tier 1 trauma center. One of them's Honolulu. It's highly unlikely they would attack there. So the other 15 are easy to find. You can go through our Substack, survivaldispatch.news. We've got maps. We've got all sorts of information on that. It's pretty easy to find on our Substack. Buffalo's a good example. Denver's a good example. And essentially, all these little small cells that are carrying out these attacks completely overwhelm the capacity of first responders, not to mention the fact that our first responders, with the exception of SWAT teams, are not trained for this. And even the SWAT teams really aren't trained for the level of sophistication, especially when a hotel or a hospital's under siege. And like Khalid said, 300 and some odd rooms at the Taj Hotel in Mumbai that the Indian commandos had to land on the roof, penetrate the roof, and then clear rooms all the way from the top down. We have some amazing SWAT team guys out there. I'm not saying anything bad against them at all, but here's what I will say. Buffalo has 25 members on their SWAT team. and about 700 regular duty cops. Now, out of the 700 regular duty cops, somewhere around 200 are post 2020 cops that are not comparable to pre 2020, pre defund the police. They're not trained for this. We have 4 FBI HRT teams, so hostage rescue teams, that are capable of doing this. We have a finite amount of Delta operators, which is really who needs to be sent in, to end a large siege like this. But if you have 10 to 15 cities happening simultaneously, it's going to take days to clear those centers. So at the end of the day, the other part to this that I want to drive home is, unfortunately, when this happens, it's going to change America forever. The Patriot Act 2.0 is going to just decimate our civil liberties and freedoms, especially compared to Patriot Act 1.0, which was bad enough as it was. So at the end of the day, if you help share our information, we would appreciate it. We get fairly frequent contacts from law enforcement organizations, and we're getting, all of a sudden, a lot of people reaching out from hospitals, because we know that that's a primary target. And I'm really thankful that people have been listening, passing the information on, but not only passing the information on, we've got people coming back to us and saying, this type of information has been presented to the hospitals before and they've dismissed it, but this time around something has changed and they're actually listening to it. So Khalid, I'm going to turn it over to you to walk us through segment 4. First 3 were last night: tactical vulnerabilities and psychology, and what are the key points here?
All right, let's start off with the basics. You are dealing with a force. Look at it this way: if a Delta team were to attack a city in the United States, your police force would be useless. Your SWAT team would be useless. They wouldn't know how to operate. The problem you've got with what's being planned is it's not one Delta force, it's 5-6 Delta forces that are coming in, and they're going target by target, and moving towards a siege location. And every target, they're planting a booby trap in behind. So when the first responders come in, they detonate a bomb. Secondly, the person who's the attacker is a bomb himself. So when you put a bullet into him and he drops, he detonates, he blows up. So there was a conversation going on in I think in our SDN chat group where they say, if one of these terrorists goes down, can I pick up a weapon from him? And I was like, hello, wait a minute, they're gonna have suicide vests on them with dead man triggers. That guy goes down and you go anywhere near him, he's gonna blow you up. There's not gonna be anything left of him or the weapon if you try and go grab something off of him. The thing that we have to understand is the whole point of this series is to help you understand what you're dealing with from the other side. When you understand what you're dealing with from the other side, you can make the playbook you need to make on how to move, how to secure yourself, how to get behind something if you're in an open area. And from there, move forward. Like Randy, Chris keeps saying, distance is safety. But getting to that safety position, you've got to understand where you can hide, because these are not handguns. This is not an active shooter someplace. These are guys that have proper military weapons. They are coming with the intent to kill as many people as possible. Firing at vehicles, gas tanks, and blowing up vehicles is not something that is an impossibility for them. Setting up roadblocks in different places so cars cannot get out and setting a car on fire is not an impossibility for them, because what they're looking at, again, is a mass casualty event. They want to see 500, 600, 700, 1,000 people dead in each location. When you get that into your head, you start thinking from a different point of view. And I think the reason a lot of people are now paying attention, Chris, if you remember, Mike Glover and I, we went through that hour by hour scenario breakdown of what was going to happen. When people sat down and listened to that hour by hour breakdown, they went, wait a minute, we have no idea what to do if this happens. We have no idea what to do if this happens. We have no idea what to do if this happens. And their minds started to think. And when they started to think, they started going, let's ask them for help. Now, we still have a lot of naysayers on the other side. They're saying, oh no, this cannot happen, this cannot happen. And if it does happen, the police are going to come and save us. Let's take a really simple example. Buffalo, New York has 825 police officers. Let's cut 50% out of them as being unqualified to handle any kind of a situation because they're green. Of the 50% that's left, only 30% of them are able to handle any kind of a main siege type of activity. Add on top of that 25 SWAT team. The level of damage you can do in a matter of 2-3 hours. Mumbai, before they got to the Taj Hotel, was 2.5 hours. And in that span of time, they had already killed 70 people and injured someplace in the neighborhood of 100, 200 more. The kind of damage you can do just in the time it takes for the police to respond is unbelievable. Mentally, you've got to get to that point where you have to understand that you are at this by yourself. That is the biggest tactical vulnerability that we have, is that you have got to understand this is all by yourself. Whatever goes through this gray matter is going to save you. And if you're not here, it's not going to happen.
Let's get into the psychology side of things. And I'm just going to rip through some really quick bullets. And then I want to ask Jeff and Randy for their opinions on these. So just some key points from a psychological perspective. Human instinct is obviously to help others. And so these terrorist attacks will exploit that basic part of human instinct to help others. First responder protocols are largely standardized and they've been studied by terrorist organizations. Think about all these hoaxes that have been going on with active shooters on campuses, bomb threats in downtown New York City. That's all being used to develop a book of SOPs, standard operating procedures. Where did the cops come from? How many cops came? How long did it take? Where did the public exfil? What direction did they run away in? All of those sort of things. It's crowd behavior is predictable under stress. So if they go one direction under one set of circumstances, that's probably the same way they're going to exfil the next time when there's an actual attack. You've also got the advent of, social media, smartphones, all those things accelerates information spread. And this started in Mumbai, where the terrorists themselves were not only monitoring this stuff, their handlers in Pakistan and Afghanistan were monitoring the attacks on social media and then sending the messages saying, hey, go here, do this next, go there, go do that next. So they were able to pivot as they went. But the psychological impact of these secondary, attacks, devices, it just continues to escalate things trauma and chaos wise to another level. Our natural belief is, lightning doesn't strike twice. So the shit hits the fan and it's like, that sucks. And my God, there's people who are dead, but lightning struck and it's over, and it's not over because here comes the next bolt of lightning and the next and the next and the next. So some of the stuff terrorists have studied and they exploit is what's called the normalcy bias, where people will rapidly try to return to a normal state as fast as possible once they get out of that initial shock. And what's that mean? It means that they let their guard down, essentially. So we've got that. Emergency services are overwhelmed. You've got this extended time frame. Mumbai was 60 hours. I can't recall how many hours Paris was, but it was somewhere in the same time range, maybe. It's long, put it that way. It's not a one and done sort of thing. So with that being said, Randy, going to go to you first. I'd like to get your thoughts on how terrorists exploit human psychology, specifically in those second, third, fourth attacks.
Well, I think you touched on it very well. They're going to play off at, certainly Americans, but generally humans, right? We see something happen. Some people need help. We're going to go over and help. And of course, it's the same old adage on the battlefield, right? It's what the Japanese used to do for sure. Vietnam, same thing. They had a sniper there. He didn't want to kill you. He wanted to wound you first. So you would cry out and others, the medics and other people would come try to help you. And then they wax all of them. And, that'll be the same kind of vulnerabilities that they're going to lend off of. And then the same thing, what we talked about, Some of them will be, as in the plan, will be dressed up as first responders. So what do we do in this country? We see the first responders, exactly what you said. We put our guard down and say, all right, the good guys are here, the cavalry's here, and you may walk right up to them. You know, that's another vulnerability that they can play off of. And then just some people, as you said, people think that because the first thing happened, that this is probably over. And then again, like you said, let their guard down or ease up and walk right into something. I think those are probably the biggest ways, but I have no doubt that there's probably 100 other ways, because these people, all they do is sit around and think this stuff up. They've taken a lot of notes. They've done a lot of video. They know what all the SOPs are. So then it's just a matter of working out each little piece. Like, okay, the cops are going to come from this way. We'll do this. The paramedics and the ambulances are going to come from this way. We'll do this. Then when other people, you know, it's a pretty simple plan as it's laid out. And although it's a very complicated plan at the same time, it's very simply laid out. So if they're in the, you know, if they're able, same thing as we talked about all the time on an ambush, two of the most important things are your terrain and the timing, right? Those are two of the most important things in an ambush. If you do it at the right terrain and you have the right timing, no one gets out.
That's right. Yeah. So since you were a paramedic, Randy, I want to ask you one more question before I go to Jeff. Is what makes the standard emergency response protocols particularly vulnerable to being exploited by terrorists?
Well, you know, because we're not used to having terrorism events, specifically in the United States. We've only had a couple. It isn't like the Middle East or some other countries that this is like every day, or all 48,000 of those since September 11th have been in this country. We would have different attitudes and different behaviors because of that. We don't, you know, for the most part, the civilian population, that doesn't even enter their head. It's not even a thought. As we've been talking about, there's a lot of people that are going to say, this cannot happen. There's no way this is going to happen. And they'll brush it off. And, you know, as a first responder, you know, certainly during my day, mine was 30 years ago. So I have no idea what they actually do today. And I know 8 minutes was a lot longer than what we had back then to be there. So some things have changed, but it's still the same old adage, right? We're going to rush in and go help. And you focus on the victims, you know, or the patients. You're not really, they may not be really paying attention to everything else that's going on, certainly a block or two away. You know, they're going to be focused on what they're doing, and you pull right up, and certainly even the cops. Although some of that's changed since 2020, you think about before 2020, cops would just rush right in there, and then there would be more cops coming. Now it might be a little slower. It seems like they kind of wait till everything's done. They come in and clean things up. So, yes. But there's still the vulnerabilities of when they're having to respond and how they respond. And if you know those metrics, it makes it fairly easy to be able to bait them into a trap.
Yeah. I mean, when the first time you said trap, the initial thought was the firefighters in North Idaho this past year.
That's a perfect example.
You know,
perfect example.
So, Jeff, I want to come to you now for a little bit more on the psychology side. What are the psychological barriers that prevent people from, you know, staying vigilant after that initial attack?
I think there's probably several, but you know, when something happens and you're surprised, and then you know you see the cops or the firemen come in, and you think I'm okay, rather than say, okay, was that the only attack? People tend to be linear thinkers. You know, there's an attack, the cops come, everything's good. Not necessarily the truth. And people are not psychologically prepared to deal with stuff, so they tend to just kind of zone out. You know, how many times have you met people who are in financial trouble who just can't admit it because they don't see a way out of it, so they just pretend it isn't happening, and they just get deeper and deeper in debt? That kind of would happen here too. They can't understand what's really going on, so they tend to just zone out. And if you look at a place, okay, a lot of time you look at the Pulse nightclub or any of these kind of places, something happens And you got those who will run to help, but you got a lot that will flee. You know, they try to get off the X, fine, great on them. But which way do they go? 99 times out of 100, they go out the way they came in, because that's the only route they know.
Yeah.
I came in through those doors. I have to leave through those doors. Well, if I'm a terrorist, you set off a bomb or something inside, everybody starts to bail. They come through these narrow doors, and then you just open up on them.
Essentially a fatal funnel.
Did a lot of that too.
Yep.
Yeah,
Fatal
absolutely.
funnels and choke
Because
points.
they don't look at alternate exits. You know, okay, this terrorist attack, he knows where the front door is too. Maybe I should find a window to crawl out or something.
So I don't know if there's an answer to this or not, but I'll throw it out there. Is there any way to address, you know, these psychological vulnerabilities without creating a society paralyzed by fear? Or are we just beyond the pale on this stuff?
Yeah, I think you can do it, but you've got to, we don't have time. You almost need to do it slowly and build on it, and do it in the terms like we've talked about before, training your kids. Okay, do it in the terms of a natural disaster, of a hurricane, of a tornado. Okay, if tornado hits the house, you may not be able to get out the front door. What other doors, or how else could you get out of the house? What other doors? What other windows? Where does it go? How far do you have to, it's the second floor, how far do you have to drop? That kind of thing. And get them thinking along the terms of improvising. Basically, you know, he says it's going to be, you don't know what's going to happen, so you're going to have to improvise, and improvise smartly.
I would suggest, I agree. I would suggest in that vein that people sign up for one of Tony Blauer's online workshops.
Yeah.
He's got multiple ones. No Fear is one of them. HWS is one, the Human Weapons System. There's no way that you can go through the curriculum for those exercises and not be better prepared for sudden violence. Full stop, end of story. The guy, I'm biased, he's a personal friend of mine, but he is the preeminent world leader on dealing with sudden violence. So Human Weapons System, we have some discount codes somewhere. I'll see if I can find them before the end of the podcast. But moving on from there, we're going to go into the next segment now, which is survival strategies for civilians. So the things that you need to know, and Jeff led us into this absolutely perfectly, by the way. So how to protect yourself during these multi-phase terrorist attacks, you know, just having some practical, simple strategies could make the difference between life and death. I really feel like this series that we're doing right now, this long war series, is, I don't think there's anything more that we're capable at Survival Dispatch of doing to help our fellow Americans than what we're doing right now. It's that important. And, you know, we have some reach, but we don't have massive reach. And hopefully you guys then share with your circles, and that extends the reach from there. So as Jeff mentioned, when you're exfilling a building, the same applies to a general area. So the most obvious evacuation, you know, routes are probably not where you want to go. And again, I'll just give the example I've given before because it's an easy one. The people who were at the concert in Israel on 10/7, who connected the dots when they saw the terrorists coming in on paragliders with machine guns and ran to the parking lot, got in their cars and tried to leave, were stopped by two Hamas guys dressed up as cops who said, whoa, 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 stop. It's not safe to go past here. And then their buddies jumped out of the bushes and slaughtered everybody in their cars. So you may not be able to exit by car. You may be on the Ankle Express, and you don't want to take the path traveled like everybody else, because the terrorists are anticipating that. You don't want to be in that herd, whether it's leaving the building or leaving the area. I would say a safe rule of thumb is to have a heightened level of awareness for a minimum of 30 minutes, but probably 60 minutes is more realistic after any incident that you're close by. And the reason I say 30 to 60, and Khalid can back this up, that's typically the window between, okay, here's the first attack, wait for the first responders, boom, here comes the second attack. It's in that 30 to 60 minute range. But hopefully within 30 to 60 minutes, you've completely exfilled the area and you're not on the X at all. Learn how to distinguish between cover and concealment. So think of your vehicle, for example. Unless somebody's got a 50 BMG, their rifle round or pistol round's not going through an engine. So if you've got the engine of the car between you and the bad guy, you have effective cover. Whereas if you're behind the back of the car, and let's say you're on the passenger side at the back and the bad guy is somewhere in line on the other side, you don't have cover. You have concealment, but you don't have cover. And most rifle rounds will easily penetrate, body panels on cars, and boom, your DRT right there. You should think about developing trigger plans for different scenarios to overcome, that paralysis. If you're really paying attention and you see shady people coming into a restaurant, for example, especially if they're carrying long guns out in the open, you should have some sort of protocol for your family. For us, if anybody sitting at the table says the word avalanche, we're leaving. No questions asked. We're just getting up and leaving. And I will go one direction while everybody else goes the path less traveled, so that the attention's drawn away from them and towards me. But you got to have some sort of plan. When I go to I worked as a doorman when I was younger, a bouncer for 7 years. My buddy's dad owned this rock and roll bar, and it was awesome. And it was awesome because I got to see these great bands amongst other things that went on there. And I got sucker punched, and I got stools busted over my head. I got kicked in the face. I had three guys on me at the same time, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not the world's greatest fighter, but I did okay. But what I did learn is after that is everywhere I go in public, I sit with my back to the wall where I can see all of the exits and I can see everybody coming in and out, because it's some element of PTSD. Not like Randy has at a much lower level, but it still comes into play. So, it's simple things like that. Just paying attention, who's coming and going, and not letting anybody behind you is a big thing for me. I don't want anybody behind me because I got sucker punched enough times from behind to learn that lesson. You should know your area well enough that you know alternate evacuation routes. Listen to this one. Keith Graves loves to tell this story. 30-year Bay Area cop, Christian Warrior training. They've got an intersection shut down because there's a wreck or something else going on. And a person would pull up and say to Keith, can I get through? I have to get through here to get home. And Keith would say, yeah, no, the intersection's closed. And the person would say, well, I don't know how to get home. Keith would be like, what? And he said that happened on a regular basis. Have alternate ways to get home when the shit hits the fan. And just to put a fine point on it, the shit hitting the fan is a broad range, right? You could be in the middle of BFE nowhere and get a flat tire in the middle of the night. That's the shit hitting the fan, all the way to a terrorist attack and multiple things in between. So SHTF has broad meaning there. Beyond that, get your EDC in order. And I don't just mean like a sidearm or concealed weapon. Tourniquets. If you can put holes in somebody, you should be able to, plug holes in people at the same time. You should always have a flashlight. I'm not going to go in depth on this one tonight. I'm going to save it for a future podcast, but there's a lot you can do with a tactical flashlight, believe it or not, to put yourself in a better situation. Yep. And we've talked about playing dead, and I'm going to recommend against it. Maybe somebody else wants to say that's a good way to go. I completely disagree, especially when you have explosives involved. If things are that bad, distance equals safety. Get the hell out of there. So, Khalid, first to you, apologies for being long-winded. What specific actions should civilians take in the critical minutes following the initial attack? Okay.
Because we've been through this situation, we understand how you have to exfil out of a hostile environment. I'm going to give you some tips that we use, because not everyone has access to everything that we've got access to in terms of Command 11's own team. One thing you need to do is get a bunch of firecrackers, M80s, regular firecrackers. Wherever you hear gunfire coming from and you want to exfil in a different direction, throw those firecrackers in the opposite direction to draw the attention away. So it sounds to them like there's fire coming from that side. It'll turn their attention away long enough that you can get to a secondary location.
Good tip.
I am just like you, Randy. When I go into a restaurant, I am back to the wall, and I am looking for reflective surfaces at all times. At all times, I'm looking for reflective surfaces, because those will show you what's going on around you. It gives you a nice 360 view without you turning your head. Because as soon as you start looking around like this, people start paying attention to you, wondering why you're looking around. But when you're looking at, for example, a glass window or a mirror someplace that can reflect back to you, that's something that gives you an added advantage of seeing what's coming on. One thing you need to be really careful of, when someone comes in and looks a little overdressed for the environment that it is, that is a warning sign. Get the hell out of there as fast as possible. Because if it's the middle of summer and someone comes in with a light jacket on, there's something wrong. Get out of there. Don't stick around to find out why he's got that jacket on. Number 4, you're going to see this happen during the attack. You will see these terrorists purposely injure themselves to get you to come to them. Because that natural reaction of you coming to help, you get 5-10 people there and you clack yourself off and you've just taken out 5-10 people without even trying. And it could be a very simple injury. It could be a fake injury. Someone starts screaming, I broke my leg, and everyone comes running. So you need to pay attention. Situational awareness, you could start building that from right now. You have got, from our time frame, you have got until November. That's when we figure, that's the timeline we've set is November 2025 to February 2026. That's when this is going to happen. That's the range that we've all figured out that it's going to happen in this time frame. You have plenty of time to figure out shopping malls, figure out escape routes in shopping malls, figure out escape routes in restaurants. If you're in a doctor's office, figure out a way out of the doctor's office without having any way of ending up locked in a room or blocked off and not being able to get out. Don't think like yourself. Think like the guy who's trying to kill you. And how would you get away from him?
I appreciate that, Khalid. That's fantastic information. So, Randy, I've got a few questions for you, partially based on the fact at one point in time when you were Green Beret, you were the Echo, which is the comms expert. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on how can families develop effective communication plans in these complex attack scenarios when you have things like cell phone networks overwhelmed. You may even have grid down situations. You may have data networks where they pulled the pin on them after the words got out. I'd love to hear your thoughts in an austere environment for comms.
Well, what I'll say first off, what Khalid said was all very good information. What you have to realize, folks, when this kicks off, you're going to be shitting your pants. That's the truth of the matter, right? When we talked about don't run out with the whole crowd, what are those people doing? They're all in panic mode. There's not a one of them is thinking clearly at all. They're just now running. So to get yourself out of that, it's no different than when you get mad, right? The fight or flight system is no different. When you get mad, it's the same thing. But when fight or flight kicks in, guess what? All the blood leaves your brain and it goes to the big muscles of the body so you can fight or run.
Yep.
To get the blood back in your brain, you need to start asking yourself a couple of simple little questions. It's amazing how well that actually works. So if you catch yourself in one of these moments, instead of panicking, you could still run or move a direction, but you need to start asking yourself some questions so your blood will come back to your brain and you can actually think. Now, beyond that, for communications, it really depends on how separated your family is. You know what I mean? If y'all are only a few blocks, some of the radios we've shown on here are perfect for that. But if you're going to be a couple of miles or 10 miles apart, you're going to need to have some sort of real radio system because your phones may not work. Right now, that's what we all depend on is our phone.
Mm-hmm.
But if the phone networks go down, you're going to need something that works without using the phone network. That would be some of my best advice, that you can communicate between each other. Now, I don't know the little Garmin you showed. I think if the system goes down, those may not work either, right? Here's the whole trick is if the power goes down and all communication services go down, you're going to have a hard time communicating. Most of us will not have the equipment that you need to communicate if there is no cell network or you can't reach the satellites. then you're going to need to have radios that don't use those systems.
Yeah, the Garmin InReach Mini 2, which is the current one, but they have other InReach products, communicates vis-a-vis the Iridium satellite network. So if you had one and I had one, we can communicate back and forth. But if I have one, like right now, if we're in North Georgia and we're way off the beaten path, I'm talking like an hour from the closest cell phone tower, I can send a text message. It goes through the Iridium satellites. It comes down to Garmin's control center and goes to you over the phone network. But if everybody has a Garmin InReach Mini, you would have satellite comms unless the Iridium satellite network was attacked and taken down. There's another product that we're testing right now. Don't go out and buy these on my recommendation yet, but we'll see how they work. So these are LTE radios. So LTE being long-term evolution, prior generation of pushing small amounts of data relative to today and relative to 5G. We have a very extensive LTE network in the United States. And when 5G goes down and you see your phone flip back to LTE, you probably also go, God, this is painful. Nothing wants to come up because of the limited bandwidth. There's a bunch of companies that make these kind of radios, and I have not had a chance to test them yet. We have 4 of these on their way, and we're actually going to test them between Texas and here to see how they function. It may be an option. Just keep that in the back of your mind, and we'll come back to that at a future episode. But I have another question for you, Randy. What everyday items should people consider carrying that could save lives? I mean, as a paramedic, there's certain things that people they should have, and what are they? The basics.
Well, I'll go back to the first thing always is, bandages. You need to be able to stop the bleeding. You need bandages, and you need to somehow be able to put pressure and to stop those wounds. For the ones that are worse, a tourniquet. You can make a tourniquet out of a lot of things, but trust me, if you actually have a real tourniquet, it is a lot easier. And, you just put it on and you start turning until the bleeding stops. So those would be, bandages, and a tourniquet is probably one of the best things that you could carry around, period. Because otherwise, I mean, certain other injuries, you're not going to be able to do a whole lot with anyway, but you can stop or help lessen the bleeding, we'll say, and maybe extend a few minutes of their life so that an actual professional might get to them and be able to rescue them, so to speak. But, I think for me, it's really controlling the bleeding is the biggest way, because I don't know, the other most important thing is your airway. And I don't know what you could carry around. The truth is to have, if they can't breathe, you got to know how to put the little hole right here.
Yeah.
That would, that is the biggest thing. And I don't know that I would give people advice just to go do that.
No, you need training on that. Before I go to Jeff, though, I do have another question for you, Randy. Have you seen firsthand somebody suffer an injury that severed a femoral artery? And if so, what's the window of opportunity to stop that bleed? Like how long before you're done?
So it's just about like your neck. That is a huge artery. And yes, most people that have been in the military. You've seen it at one time or another. And I've seen it a couple times, but you don't have long at all. I would say 2 to 3 minutes tops, because it's a huge artery. And man, when that thing breaks loose, as you know, we all have blood pressure, right? So when you pop a hole in that thing, certainly in a big hole like that, it's just like almost every single of your blood just comes out in a rush. And you literally, whether it's a neck injury, but there's not a lot you can do about, even high in the chest. But if it's the leg wound, man, you got to get a tourniquet on there, like lickety split, and get that thing cranked down, because you just don't have time at all. I'm telling you, 2 or 3 minutes tops, if that thing's bleeding out, is about all it takes for that person to bleed to death.
No, I appreciate that. Thanks, Randy. Jeff, sorry about the delay getting to you, but a couple of really important questions for you. First one is, how can civilians quickly distinguish between potential secondary attack indicators and normal activity, like normal first responder activity?
Behavior. Because, civilians, first responders, everybody, they've got one thing in common. They didn't know it was coming.
Yep.
The only people who knew it was coming and it won't be in a panic mode are the terrorists. And if there's a secondary attack, they're probably going to be the only relatively calm people in the area.
That's a very good
Because
point.
they weren't surprised.
Yep.
And if you see everybody in a panic and you can see first responders running this way, and then you see all the civilians running that way, and you see a couple of guys just kind of hanging out, not panicked, looking around, yeah, that's when you say that's not normal behavior.
Yep.
You want to get the hell away from them as fast as you can. Again, that's all I can say is just look at the behavior of the people around you. But you've got to have a clear head to even make that assessment. If you're in panic mode and you're just running like with your hair on fire, you're not even going to notice.
No.
And I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to our friend Tony Blauer, who coined the phrase "weaponize the flinch" in the 1990s. The whole idea was, he'll ask somebody or he'll even do it. I've seen him throw something at somebody at the beginning of a workshop, and they put their hands up like that. And he said, "When's the last time something came flying at you and you had to think, oh, I should put my hands up and block it?" And he said, you don't have to think. It's an autonomic behavior. Okay, well, how do you take that autonomic behavior now? Because you're not going to live if you're on your heels and you're backing up, and weaponize it and go after the guy. So go look up Tony Blauer. Like I said, I'm very biased. He's a good friend of mine. But ironically enough, you guys will get a kick out of this, by the way. He sent out an email a couple weeks ago that somebody was doing some searching on an AI, and it came back and it said, you should consult Tony Blauer. He's the preeminent world expert on sudden violence. Of course, Tony was very proud of it, sent it out there, rightfully so. I have another question for you, Jeff, and it's an important one. What training would you recommend for average citizens to prepare for these types of scenarios?
Well, like Randy said, you need some basic, first aid training. You need to know how to apply a tourniquet. You need to know how to stop bleeding. And another thing, like for a pack to stop bleeding, one of the things that women have a lot and are handy for that are feminine napkins. They have them in their purse. They'll work if you're trying to pack a wound. But yeah, just be able to know what to do and be able to improvise. If you don't have a tourniquet, what do you have? What clothing do you have on you that you can use to make a tourniquet? Is there if you're in a bar, is there a banner held up by a heavy twine? You can use that twine to make a tourniquet. Another one is basic weapons training. So if you do have a weapon, make sure you know how to use it proficiently and under stress. But the other one I would say was think about training yourself to look for improvised weapons.
Yeah.
If you're not packing, you're in a bar. Okay, you can't carry a gun in a bar, and something goes down like the Pulse nightclub. What around me can I use as a weapon? What can I use to defend myself? What can I use to attack the shooter to put him off his game? He's just out there trying to kill people. He's probably not expecting a big heavy beer mug to come flying towards his head. And that'll put him off his plan. But you got to be prepared to improvise no matter what. Medically, defense-wise, something. You've got to be prepared to fight back.
And Bad Karma here has a great, I should have thought about this, but they're out there. You can buy gunshot wound cases. GSW is what gunshot wound kit. And they come with pretty much everything you would need to treat. And I think instructions as well. So that is also a very good recommendation of what people could buy right now in the event of.
Well, I appreciate him and you bringing that up. Thank you very much. So we're getting ready to move into the last segments here. There's one question I want to quickly answer. You guys said you think it'll happen between November and February. What day of the week and time of day do you think they will strike? I'm going to give you my answer. Then I'm going to ask you, Khalid, to give you his answer, and then we'll jump into the next segment. But my answer would be when they can inflict the maximum amount of chaos. So think morning rush hour, just like 9/11 1.0 was. And if it's happening across the country simultaneously, you could probably think mid-morning on the East Coast and early morning on the West Coast for those 10 to 15 cities being attacked. But they're going to want to hit people when things are the most congested and make it the most difficult for families to reunite, the most difficult for families to communicate. As far as the day of the week is concerned, I don't know. That's a great question. I'm going to defer to Khalid, but time of day, I'm pretty confident on as far as a weekday. Khalid?
I want you guys to look at the time frame, November until February. That's Christmas.
So it's definitely holiday season. You're right about that.
I mean, the time frame we are looking at is very easy mass casualties. Your shopping malls will be full. Your stores will be full. People's hands will be full. They won't be, the odd person will not even phase you because it'll be Christmas shopping time. Again, when we talk about this, we talk about it from the point of view of think like they're thinking. They picked that time when the weird guy walking around with his hands full is not going to recognize another guy walking around with a shopping cart who may be a little bit bulky. It's that mental state that you have to keep in mind, that they're looking, that you're going to be shopping, you're going to be out there with your family, the malls are going to be full of people until late at night. From early morning until late at night, the shopping malls are going to be full. That's a target-rich environment. The reason I brought it up and I said, keep firecrackers in your pocket. That's a great distraction. If you're looking to draw their attention away when they're firing at you, and all of a sudden they hear fire, they hear explosions or firing from another direction, it's going to turn them away. It's going to stop their firing, and it gives you a chance to get out. So you need to start thinking. The reason I say you need to start thinking like they do is come out of the comfort zone and start thinking, okay, if I was going to attack, and this is what we do, this is how I train my teams. I take them into a commercial area. I say, okay, if you were going to attack this place, how would you do it? Where would you come from? What exits would you cover? Where would you plant explosives? Where would your secondary shooter be? Where would your third level shooter be? And work it out from there. When you start thinking that way, because everyone's watched enough of these action movies that your mind can think that way, that I'm in a shopping mall. Okay, I'm in a food court. In the food court, there are this many exits. They're going to block all my exits. How do I get out? How do I get 10 seconds that I can get from the table to the wall and move that way? The time of day, the week, the day of the week, no one knows. But if you're in every place you go, you are figuring out the best exfil route, and you are carrying something with you that will draw attention the other way to give you the opportunity to move. You'll be safe getting out. You'll get out of the first tier attack zone. Then you worry about the second tier attack zone. The second tier is going to be somebody outside from the main doors. They are not going to be looking at the back doors. They're not going to be looking at the exits that come out the windows from the bathrooms. They're not going to be looking at the things that aren't going to be commonly used. So look for the most uncommon way to leave. That will get you out alive, and then move. Look for cover, move. Look for cover, move. Look for cover, move. But again, for this to work, you've got to stay inside this gray matter. Once you come out of this gray matter, it's game over. They've got an open shot at you. And you've got to stay there. And that's the hardest thing, because we've had explosions happen here, and I have seen people scatter. And when they scatter, there's people waiting there, tuck, 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 tuck. Down they go.
Yeah,
you've got to stay in your mind.
Yeah, appreciate that, Khalid. Somebody did make a comment that we're fortunate here in America because all of exits are marked, and there is a caveat to that, which you just touched on. And there's instances of terrorist attacks where they're not just standing in front of the front door waiting for people to exfil through the front door. They're waiting at the fire exits to mow people down there as well. So be aware, just because it's a marked exit and it's not the main exit doesn't necessarily mean it's the safest way to go. Myself, an exit that's not marked in a restaurant at all, at least not from the public dining area, is the kitchen. So, I come from Greek heritage, so the Greeks have a thing for going through the kitchens, and it's a whole Greek thing. I'll leave for another story for another day. But bottom line is that's my exit, is going out through the kitchen exit. So want to quickly mention that if you head on over to survivaldispatch.news, this is what it looks like. Now, when we're broadcasting live, we've got the stream up here, but most of the time it would just start at the sit rep of the day. This is today's sit rep. If you go to survivaldispatch.news, sign up for a free account, you get the sit rep every day. And this is the corresponding document that goes with the podcast of that night. We have feature articles on weekends. Ryan Guijo, former CIA guy, we've had him on a bunch of times. He just wrote an excellent article, for example, on situational awareness. You get all of this stuff for free. You get our Saturday watch guide for free that lists everything that we published for the week, both podcast wise, as well as instructional videos done by JJ Morris. And you also get all of his videos early. We send them to Substack first. They go to YouTube either later in the day or the next day. So you get all of his stuff early. And if you come down here just past my signature, if you sign up for $7.99 a month or $75 a year, which gets you 2.5 months for free, you get all of this. You get all of our sources for the daily sit rep. But probably more enticing than that, than anything else, I'd have to say, is our Signal chat, which is we have the private Signal chat for paying guardians. If you install Signal on your phone, send your phone number to support@survivaldispatch.com. Make sure you don't hide your number. We'll get an invite to you. There are days that there's over 3,000 messages go through there. There was one of our regulars, I'm trying to remember if it was Astro Mom or Dee Dee this afternoon, said, "Hey, I got to go to work for a 9-hour shift. When I come back to catch up, I don't want to see 300 messages," as a joke. So I replied to her and I said, the person who posts the 301st comment, the Signal chat, gets a lifetime free membership to Survival Dispatch. So I noticed that Bruno and some other guys are in there like, have we reached 301 yet? There's been a ton of messages. So anyway, that's one of the big value adds, because there's a ton of intel that's shared in a like-minded community. You get enrolled in their SDN system, Survival Dispatch Emergency Notification System. Something bad happens, you'll be amongst the very first people to know about that. You get our entire library of 37 Survival Dispatch Insider magazines. Those are the covers over there. We sell them for $10 a piece. So you get $370 worth of those in PDF form for free. And it's a good deal, but it also helps us defer our expenses, like $4,000 a month in software, those sort of things. Not that that's your problem, but the people who do support, we appreciate your support very, very much. All right. So final segment is the implications for law enforcement and policy. And we're going to discuss not just law enforcement, but emergency responders, public policy, and how we can adapt to this evolving threat. I don't think we can adapt fast enough before 9/11 2.0 happens, because there's certain people in key positions like Sebastian Gorka got their thumb up their ass and are not paying attention at all. They're going to have blood on their hands. So here, I'm going to give you some bullets, and I'll come straight to you, Khalid, with questions first. Traditional secure the scene protocols are going to have to be revised to account for these secondary strike attacks. And Randy alluded to that, where you're seeing some police all by themselves. When they show up, they kind of take an inventory of what's going on before they dive right in. But we need to formalize stuff like that, especially for places like public venues. I'm thinking everything from stadiums to arenas to malls and everything in between. I would need to have some forethought towards response staging areas and make them unpredictable. So basically, if you have people injured, or you have, the terrorists are monitoring events and they see somebody has a heart attack, which happens in public or whatever, they're watching to see where the first responders and paramedics are taking that person to stage them before they get medevaced out of the area. You got to be unpredictable with that sort of stuff. We need a whole lot of training for our law enforcement. You heard Mike Glover speak to that at length on Wednesday this week. Comm systems is really important, and it's something that most of us don't have covered. I have Garmin InReach Mini, and I'm happy with it, but 3 is 2, 2 is 1, 1 is done. I'm hoping those POC link, LTE radios are the bomb. We have business class radios, just like the cops have, the exact same radios the cops have. And unless you have ginormous antennas and repeaters all over the place, you have very limited reach in an urban environment with those. Here's a big one: hospitals, medical facilities, heightened security. I'm not going to say what hospital this is, but there's a hospital in Central Florida where I talked to the former head of their trauma response team today. And he told me there's a grand total of 5 security guards. 2 of them have tasers. 3 of them have pistols. And every last one of them is so fat and out of shape that they wouldn't stand a chance. They have no rifles. You can't win a gunfight against bad guys with rifles. It's all you have is a pea shooter. It just doesn't happen. It's a dangerous, dangerous situation in our hospitals right now, to say the least. Schools and churches, of course, it could stand a lot of improvement. Thank God we've got Keith Graves at Christian Warrior Training helping out on the church side, but schools are particularly vulnerable. I mean, just look at these active shooter attacks that keep happening. We should have locked down our schools years ago. It shouldn't have taken this long to get to that point, and we're still not there. Public education campaigns. So I think that's part of, I asked Jeff, how do you do this without putting people into a constant state of panic? You can do public education campaigns and some of it will stick. Maybe all of it doesn't stick, but maybe enough sticks that one person on the X ends up saving 5 people on the X with them as well. We do very little cross training, by the way, in this country between military law enforcement and civilian emergency services. And that needs to change. That's one that Mike Glover mentioned to me off the record earlier this week. And I hate to say this and open this can of worms, but there's some constitutional considerations to balance the security needs with American values and freedoms, right? I'm not in favor of giving up civil liberties, for safety and security, but there may be some things we have to look at. I don't know. It's the first thing in life, you decide what you want. Next thing you do is decide what you're willing to give up to get it. The left always likes to say, but if it saves one life, it's worth you giving up this civil liberty. I'm a textbook libertarian, lowercase l. I don't agree with that. So Khalid, you first, and then Jeff, or Randy, and then Jeff. Give us more insight, because Pakistan has been attacked so many times in these terrorist attacks by these groups that use you guys as the test bed. Yeah. How should emergency response protocols evolve to address this threat of secondary devices, secondary attacks, tertiary attacks, and so on?
Well, our guys, because when from 2007 until 2013, the Taliban Pakistan was attacking civilian targets most of the time. Then in 2015, they figured out, wait a minute, if we keep attacking civilians, people aren't going to listen to our message. So they switched over and they started attacking police and paramilitary and military targets. And we've been watching how they've operated both back in the old days when they first were attacking civilian targets and how they're operating now. What you see is they start off with a suicide vehicle, a vehicle-borne IED, a VBID comes in first and that detonates. That gets everyone going, what? And there's that flood of people that comes out. That's not how it's going to happen in the US, except for in the hospitals. The hospitals will be hit with VBID from the very start, because they will want to create mass panic. And that lets you move in and take over the hospital very quickly. Here in Pakistan, because I've trained counterterrorism here in Pakistan, the way we've got it set up is if you see a suspicious character, fire. Don't even sit and wait for it. The reason the Banu attack did not work, the attack we had on the 2nd, the reason it did not work is because they saw guys on motorcycles on empty roads at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. And they went, no, this isn't right. And they fired. And as soon as they fired and they hit a couple of them, detonation started. And then the vehicle IED hit the wall of the paramilitary base. The thing we have to get past, because again, you as a police officer, you're trained not to fire unless you are being openly threatened. This is not something where you have that time frame to decide. If you see somebody that is bulky, looks out of place, jittery in the way they're behaving, because that's something we've seen also. The guys that are carrying out these attacks, they're very jittery. They're looking around. They don't have that presence of mind where a normal person who goes into a market, a normal person that goes into some location, you go in, you do your shopping, you look around, you do what you need to do. These guys, when they come in, they're like this, the heads on a swivel, looking around. Who's where do I move? What do I do? Even though they've done surveillance, even though they've done recon, even though that guy himself has been in that location, walked it himself, the day he's got that vest on, he's got that weapon in his hand, he's jittery. When you see that jittery guy, fire. That's my number one advice to a law enforcement officer. Fire. We'll answer questions later. I mean, my detail is trained that way. The other night when we had the suspicious individuals, they were under orders. Do you see somebody here late at night that doesn't belong here? Fire first. We'll ask questions later, because you don't know who's coming at you, and when you know an attack is coming, you've got to play at that level.
We are not giving you legal advice, by the way.
No, this is not legal. This is not legal advice we're giving you. We are talking about protecting yourself. And this is law enforcement we're talking to. We're not talking to civilians. We're talking to law enforcement. Because law enforcement is not trained for a swarm attack. Law enforcement is not trained for terrorist attacks. When we look at what's happened with active shooters in the US, you see all the police jumble into one place. That's shooting fish in a barrel. That's literally shooting fish in a barrel, because they're all in one place. One suicide bomber walks up there and clacks himself off. He's taken out 200, 300 cops. And you're defenseless. The entire city is defenseless then. So you've got to mentally get to that point that as a police officer, you need to step out of your training and start working with your gut, start working with your instinct. Someone doesn't look right, make a move. And he will show his attention as soon as you make that move.
Or go get better training. There are a lot of instances, there are a lot of agencies that if you go and upgrade your skills from a certified, facility and trainer, that you'll actually get a bump in your pay. So I'd recommend looking into that as well. Randy, first question for you. What policy changes would you recommend regarding venue security and public gatherings, protecting people in public gatherings, those sort of venues?
Well, if we took this threat credibly and seriously, then I'm not saying lockdowns, but, we really shouldn't have a whole bunch of huge events.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We need to limit that. And that would be smart, because as we mentioned, they want the biggest bang for the buck. So we don't know what that's going to be, but as Khalid mentioned, the holidays are coming up, football season's in, there's a lot of stuff going on between November and February that draw large crowds. I don't know that we're going to invoke any policies as far as governmental wise, but people can do it on their own. That's what I would recommend. I wouldn't be going to any, and I won't be going to any kind of big event for the next few months. Now, maybe after February, I'll say, okay, if nothing happened, then maybe we can move on with the rest of life. I'm not going to sit in my house. I'm not going to, do nothing. I'm not going to lock myself down, but I'm definitely going to not put myself in the situations like that in a large crowd. There's just no reason for me to do that at this point. And I just don't think it's prudent, because if something goes down, then it's we can sit here and talk about it right now because nothing's happening. But if you found yourself in the middle of that, trying to think like we were just talking about is going to be a whole lot harder than you think, because everybody's going to be running. It's going to look like just like the Vegas shooting. When that shooting started, everybody ran the opposite way. And all in a crowd, and not, there wasn't anybody thinking. So your policy should be in your own family and what you're going to go do and what kind of risk you're going to put yourself at. Because we're really only talking about the next few months. This isn't for the rest of your life. This isn't forever. This is only for a moment of time, so that you ensure the fact that maybe you don't get caught up in the middle of it and your family.
Vegas, an interesting scenario. We've discussed it a number of times, but the attackers knew exactly where people were going to run, because they had limited means to exfil the location. And they had some 308 armor piercing rounds that weren't thick enough to penetrate the gas tanks, the propane tanks, and the goal was to explode those. And there's your
They did
secondary.
shoot that thing.
They just bounced off of it.
Yeah, that's right.
Unfortunately,
Luckily,
but
yeah.
yes, yeah, exactly. So similar type of question, but really important one, Randy, is how can we better prepare our schools and churches for these complex attack scenarios? And let me just give you one thing quickly here. So I'm not talking about just a terror cell shows up and it's a regular active shooter event at a school where they break in the door and they start shooting people, but they show up on site in a van that's an HVAC company, and they put a ladder up against the school and they climb on the roof and they put sarin canisters and the HVAC stuff that's set to triggered to go off 10 minutes later. And then they get off the roof and they stand at the exits waiting for people to come out because of the nauseating effects, and gun people down. So keeping that context in mind, how do we secure these facilities better, schools and churches in particular?
I think, because back in our day, when we went to school, the doors were all open. I think today, don't they lock the doors once school starts? That would be a good start. That should be a policy, like for the next few months. If these things, they already have school resource officers, they should probably put a few more there. As we talked about earlier, these schools aren't protected. Now, I get it. There's more than the courthouse, but it only took 1 or 2 shootings at the courthouses, and every one of them are locked down now. They are all locked down. You have to go through metal detectors. There's a lot of things that we could do in schools right now, that may make a difference, because the biggest part is going to see them coming when they make their move. And if you've got some people there, some more officers that are kind of standing around looking for this type of stuff, I think that's where we should go. You have some rude professionals. There was people that talked about, and I know there's a lot of them that would do it. Heck, hire some veterans. They'd be more than happy to go protect the schools and be walking around basically like they did on deployment anyway. They've already done this type of thing on deployment and other installations. They know how to walk around that school and protect it away to look and watch for these things to start happening.
All of the public schools in our county here in Central Florida have fence perimeters with locked gates. They open the gates in the morning for buses and parents drop kids off. They open them up at the end of the day for pickup. If you try to go in during the day, you have to have an appointment in advance. So we've got a pretty good handle on things in our county. I would like to see more SROs myself as well.
That should be across the country. Those policies you just talked about, I don't know why every school's not doing that, just because of the school shootings alone.
Agreed.
Not what we're talking about, but certainly you should be ready for that, because apparently it's coming.
There's a guy on X who's a former spec operator like yourself, and he's trying to put together a group where people can sign up, qualify in some way to be like a national network of military operators that would be available as I'm trying to think like a supplementary mechanism available for law enforcement that would be recognized, all those sort of things. That could potentially work for schools as well. I don't have all the details. I'm just kind of on the periphery of the conversation, but multiple people have said that you need former Green Berets like you and Mike Glover and whatnot. You need that level of training to respond to this level of attacks. It ain't happening at the police academy.
And there's a ton of veterans out there that have those skill sets. Not as many but even infantry guys, you can school up real quick, right? Because they have the basics of it already. And so, and there are plenty of veterans that would love to do that. And that's what we should do. 100%. Somebody just mentioned, well, that sounds like California, schools with metal detectors and lockdown and this and that. Okay, you got to do something. This isn't taking their rights away. It's not like we took the rights of the kids away. They're going to school and they're going to each class anyway. So all we're doing is trying to protect them from becoming a soft target, which is exactly what they are right now.
Well, that's an idiotic comment on the person's part, because that's Einstein's definition of insanity, doing the same thing and expecting different results. So you have to do something. You can't just sit around with your thumb up your ass. Jeff, when I go to you here, got a couple of really specific questions for you. Number one, what technologies might help identify or neutralize some of these secondary devices more effectively? Because it sounds to me from what Khalid shared with us, they're getting pretty sophisticated.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And I think the secondary devices, if the person's wearing them, you may have to resort to, there are kind of like versions of night vision goggles, but they can penetrate clothing and you can see outlines of things that are under the clothes. Georgia Tech invented one that can actually see through walls. It's a radar based system, and so if you watch a crowd go by and you can say, wait, whoa, that one, he's got all this crap strapped around his waist. Okay, then you probably identified your secondary suicide bombers. But when you're dealing, car bombs, things like that, most of the time those are pre-positioned. They've been there. They just park them on the side of the road, and then they can either set them off by with a timer or a cell phone or something like that. So, yeah, I'm not that well versed on what technologies are out there that can, detect somebody wearing a bomb from a distance. I'm sure
The dog.
The dog, yeah. But one of the things you have when the primary attack goes, all the cops, they go, the first responders go to the side of the attack.
Yeah.
You almost need to train people to say, I know that's going to be your go-to, but if you've got a unit, you've got a team of 4 guys, only 2 of you can go. And 2 of you have to stay where you are because there could be something else behind you. Now, if it gets worse and they need more people, fine. But you want to put all your eggs in one basket? If there's a guy there with a bomb at the basket, no, you don't. We saw it on 9/11. All those cops, all those firemen went into buildings, and then when the buildings collapsed, those dudes were wiped out. I mean, there was like nobody, and it kind of goes against human nature to I want to rush in there and help. But someone's got to stay, just like in the military, you keep a reserve force. And you kind of need a reserve force. And with all the cops on duty, you can say, okay, if there's an attack or if something goes down, these 2 are first, you 2 are secondary, but you're going to hold back.
Yeah. We had Will Jimeno on that you may remember. And he was one of there were 2 survivors pulled out of the Twin Towers after they collapsed. So he was a 5-man team, Port Authority cops, and they were walking through the bridge, the internal bridge from one to the other when the whole thing came down. 2 other guys were killed instantly. One other guy died at arm's reach from him. Will was pulled out something like 18 hours later, and his sergeant was pulled out 24 hours later. We had him on Survival Dispatch News. It's pretty incredible story, but like you said, everybody, died. They were the only 2 who came out, Will Jimeno and his boss. It was pretty crazy stuff. So moving on from there, that's it for segment number 6. And we're basically at the end of tonight's main topic and broadcast. I want to briefly mention today's hero of the day, and let me get that pulled up on screen here for y'all. I agree with this one tremendously, by the way, and that would be Tina Peters as the hero of the day. So Tina should not be in prison. The judge who put her in prison, absolute, pardon my French, fucking anti-American piece of shit. One of the worst admonitions I've ever seen in my frickin' life. My very good friend Jeff O'Donnell did the forensics on the hard drive image that Tina had a tech guy pull because she was responsible for it. Jeff O'Donnell's his name. Go to the fingerprints of fraudthemovie.com and you can see his multi-part documentary on how he dissected the data and how the 2020 election was stolen. And that piece of shit judge who was elected by the same machines forbid Jeff O'Donnell's evidence to be admitted, which was 100% exculpatory. So not only does Tina deserve to be released, and not only is she a hero, that asshole judge should be taking her empty place in prison afterwards. I don't know if anybody else wants to add anything to this, but this is a national travesty here. Anybody else want to chime in on that? I'll take that. It's not. Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
No, I was just saying she's in jail because she uncovered the fraud, not because she did anything wrong, but she caught him.
Correct. It's absolutely
All it is.
It's abhorrent. Moving on to the next one. This, of course, came from Dale the Machine. I mean, Tim Smith does a great job, as well as many other people in our Signal chat, but Dale's the machine when it comes to posting news. Liberals have now reached the stage where they are defending drug cartels. 41 seconds.
Suspected drug smuggling is not a crime that is punishable by death.
Wait. Have we actually reached a point where liberals are defending the drug cartels? There's no fucking way. No way we have reached a point where people are like, they don't deserve to die. They're the drug cartels. Are you shitting me? These are people who literally videotape themselves decapitating people and send it to people's families to get them to do what they want. And you're defending them. Oh my God, we really are where the American liberal is defending the drug cartels. I cannot wait until Trump talks about how much he loves oxygen.
Well, did you see that, they're also, now there are a bunch of liberal women getting booster shots and posting that online to Robert Kennedy Jr. that they see, I just got my next booster. And I'm like, geez, man.
Go ahead.
That's right. Take another one.
And if you get myocarditis, you shouldn't be allowed to claim any kind of like medical.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, and I got $100 that this girl on screen here is on SSRIs. I would bet. Actually, I put $1,000 on that.
I would not take that.
Right.
He's on a happy pill.
Yes.
All right. So a conflicted question of the night. Out of all the conspiracies in the world today, name 2 conspiracy theories that you believe in that other people may think are crazy. Briefly explain why you believe them to be true. And Khalid, I'm going to go to you first.
I don't know any conspiracy theories anymore. I mean, COVID's been busted. The election fraud's been busted. What's left now? I mean, we need to create some new conspiracy theories and float those around so that they get a little bit of weight so that we can believe in something, weird.
Okay, that's not a very good answer.
No, I don't know any. I'm sorry. All the conspiracy theories that we were following have all been, debunked, that they weren't conspiracies.
I got a couple, Chris, and I'll start off easy because I don't want to upset Jeff too much. My second one definitely will. But my first one's a real easy one that now seems to be coming to light, that apparently we didn't really go to the moon, right? And you got to ask yourself, though, when you do look at the videos, you have to ask yourself, okay, well, if he was the first one out, how did the cameraman get outside to film him getting down on the moon for the first time? It just can't happen that way. Then you look at the size of the capsule, right? And then you look at the size of that buggy that was on the moon. Where did that buggy? How did it get there? Now, I will say in defense of them, I know in World War II, right? The original Willie, those things they were in a box, basically a crate, and 4 men would open this crate and they could put that Jeep together in about 3 or 4 hours. Maybe that's how it was, but how did they get the buggy up there in the capsule that they're in, which was very, very small? So that's one of the things that you got to kind of scratch your head. And I think, we pulled a fast one over on the world there, didn't we? If it's true that we didn't actually go, we pulled a good fast one, didn't we?
I think Jeff wants to rebut this, or at least speak there. Go ahead.
For one, the camera was fixed on the vehicle. It was on the leg. It wasn't there wasn't anyone handling it.
Well, I'm talking about the one where he's bouncing down. You see the back of him. Where is that? Where did that camera come from?
Where he's going down the stairs?
Yeah.
The ladder? Yeah, it's on one of the legs of the landing of the limb.
Okay.
And as far as the little buggy goes, if you look, they had back in the day, you're too young. They had it all on TV. They showed it. What it is
you're right. I did not see that.
It was on the limb, and the wheels all folded in, and then they would unfold, and it lowered it down, and boom. And those things didn't weigh much anyway.
That's what I was going to say. If it really
fair
there
enough.
was a buggy, they would have filmed them putting it out. So if they did, okay, that may be the case.
Yeah, but
I
it's
don't
all-
know. It seems kind of odd, but whatever.
Yeah, but no.
Yeah. And so my biggest one is, and Chris
What's
knows
your
what this
second?
is. It's 9/11. It's 9/11. I don't care what anybody says at this point. We did that to ourselves, and that is a fact. That is a fact. There's so much video and so much other things out there now that coming from people, including one I saw the other day. There was a guy that worked in the basement that said there was an explosion down there 5 minutes before the first plane hit the top of the tower. And he did say he knows the difference of when something goes boom in the basement and when something goes boom in the top of the tower.
Yeah.
But, we'll have to unwrap that package at another time. But there's a lot to what happened in September 11th. And, it is all, we'll say odd at the least, to say the least. It's odd.
Fair enough. Well, Jeff, you get final say.
Well, I've only got one because all the other ones I used to believe in have come true. I'm going to go out on a limb on this one, and I'm going to say, I think that Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce actually do love each other, and they aren't doing this whole thing for clicks.
Oh. Okay,
Is
then
it just
how long do you think that little charade's going to last, though? Let's.
No, I have no
How long do they
clue.
go? When do you think the divorce is going to be?
Hey, if they start cranking out kids, I'll give them. I'll say good on them.
Yeah.
This
I'm
is
not-
not the Survival Dispatch News National Enquirer edition, okay?
Hey, look,
We
we have
cover
fake
serious
nomads.
shit
Why not?
here. We cover serious shit here.
The mainstream
So-
media has already put them out of business, so we're not going to resurrect them.
Right. I'll tell you what I would throw out for conspiracy theory that I'm absolutely positive is true is that Jeffrey Epstein was working for Mossad. He was working for the Israelis. And that if all of the information were to come out, I personally think the Israelis have dirt on every major politician and public person in America. And a lot of it's related to deviant sexual proclivities. And that if that information comes out, I'm with what was his name? The guy who arrested Julian Assange. I'm with Julian Assange on this, that the Hollywood and DC will both come crashing down. So go ahead, Jeff.
There is a precedent for that. The Profumo affair in Britain back in the 50s, the Russians hired some babe to bed some senior government official, and then they were trying to use it to blackmail. Brought down a government, actually.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised by that at all. So we'll be back on Monday evening, usual time, 7 p.m. Eastern, with the next episode in our Long War series, and it's titled When the Authorities Can't Be Trusted. The theme is going to be compromised officials, DHS failures, bad actors. And in summary, it's kind of, who do you trust when the cops are gone, FEMA is overwhelmed, or the intel, was completely ignored. I want to thank our sponsors, CCW, say best self-defense coverage bar none. If you have self-defense insurance, get rid of it. It's not worth the paper that it's written on. I want to especially thank our friends at Carnivalt. So this is freeze-dried, 100% American meat, no mRNA, no antibiotics, no nothing bad in it at all. No histamines, American ranchers. You've got the bags, the packaging made in America. You've got the O2 absorbers made in America. This is grass finished, not grass fed products, which means like grass fed means the last few weeks they bulked them up on grain and they were exposed to all the chemicals and crap with it. Takes 5 minutes to reconstitute it, weighs nothing. This bag here, 6 ounces, turns into 1.5 pounds of beef. We've sent a bunch of it out to a bunch of really high profile people, and every last one of them's come back and said, oh my God, this is an incredible product. 25-year shelf life. In reality, because it's 0.12% moisture content, it's actually got a 40-year shelf life, but for legal reasons, 25-year shelf life. Chicken, beef, and pork. It's great for prepping, stack it up on the shelves, it won't go away. But if you're like Randy and me, we put it on the shelf, then we eat it. So much for prepping.
I just
It's
ordered some
elite.
more, in fact.
That's awesome. Randy's great. And they're super guys. So support those guys. They're true Americans. You can use the code EAT MEAT, all one word, 10% off, free shipping over $99. They ran a thing on Labor Day where they're giving away gifts. Don't be surprised if they throw some sort of gift in your product. That's just the way they are. They're super guys. We don't get an affiliate commission. I don't like to do affiliate commissions for the most part, but they do pay us a monthly stipend that helps us offset all of our fixed costs. Things like, 19 subscriptions to Microsoft Office 365. We've got all kinds of software subscriptions, et cetera, et cetera. And if we didn't have sponsors like that, and we didn't have Guardian members like you that pay $7.99 a year, $75 a year, I'd be punching a clock. Khalid would be punching a clock. We'd all be punching clocks except for Jeff. And we wouldn't be able to bring you the truth, which we strive to do, on a daily basis. So thank you very much, everybody out there, for your support. Between now and Monday, we do have a special episode actually tomorrow from JJ Morris and a buddy of his, Mike, where they took this stuff in the woods and all they had was their regular backpack and said, okay, what can we do with this? I haven't even watched the whole thing. I can tell you this much. The first 2 minutes, I fell off my chair laughing. It's so freaking funny. So that'll be published on Substack first thing in the morning, and it'll be published YouTube later on in the day. But between now and then and Monday, please like, share, comment, subscribe. God bless America, and enjoy the closing video.